This is the story about why a group of friends rode their dirt bikes for 2 days to a small town near Jackson Hole, Wyoming. On brand for a Dirtbike Dad's adventure, the night before was spent fixing a stator in a dirt bike, trying to plastic weld with JB Weld, a gas tank, and of course, a lot of laughing and joking around. Average guy nearly lost his life because he asked his wife to go to Walmart for him to find that plastic JB Weld. And then he had the audacity to call her to find out why she was taking so long. It was about 9 o'clock when we hit dirt. It was a race against time. We had about 220 miles ahead of us in pretty rough terrain. As we were going up the first trail, over the Senna intercom, one of the riders said, "I just backpacked this trail 2 weeks ago, and I thought, man, who would be stupid enough to ride a dirt bike on this?" Turns out today we are the stupid people riding our dirt bikes on this trail. So the trail ended up being pretty steep and a lot of small rocks that were kind of like riding on marbles. And so there were several crashes along the way just trying to ascend the first trail. In talking just after the ride, there was a lot of conversation about this first trail and how many of the riders were thinking, oh my gosh, if it's going to be like this for the next 10 hours, I don't think I can do it. The views were beautiful. Looking out across the valleys on both sides of the mountains because we were riding kind of the ridge. We could see for miles and miles. And of course, we were badgering each other about how terrible riders each one of us are as we rode across the top. It doesn't get much better than this. The ride was kind of slow going, and we had several miles to cover in a short period of time before the sun went down. At the pace we were going, we were scheduled to arrive at around 8:30 p.m., which was a slight problem because one of the dirt bikes didn't have a headlight, and the sun went down at a little after 7 p.m. We were having a good time, but of course we had the usual hiccup here and there, where we had a broken shift lever, and at some point along the way, the battery had died on one of the bikes and could not run without any battery. So we ended up swapping a battery from one of the other dirt bikes that could run without it, that had a kickstart, and we swapped it on the side of the trail and kept going. This is probably a pretty good time to put a side note in here on two topics. Number one, I hate duct tape. Really any kind of tape that leaves residue, and pretty much all tape leaves residue because nobody's ever there to help clean it up. And if it sits there for long enough, it almost becomes permanent. It becomes very difficult to remove. But here is the one time where I think tape is okay. We always keep duct tape, a whole bunch of zip ties, and a few other things for trail side fixing like this. You can see that the shift lever, we used duct tape. And in order to get this battery to fit, obviously we had some ingenuity going on the side of the trail, including zip ties. And one last thing that is good to have on a dirt bike trip like this would be paracord. I had a friend once who said, you can solve all the world's problems with a little bit of paracord. We of course used some paracord to pull one of the dirt bikes for a little while we were trying to bump start it. On dirt bike rides like this, the Senna really does come in handy because then we can have long conversations about things that are very important. For example, there's one conversation that went on for probably the better part of an hour about pickles and how 55 was the best temperature to keep a pickle. And somehow we had gotten on that topic because the speed limit was 55. So it went from double nickels to pickles. Very natural transition. And of course, we had to take a couple of deviations in our course because of different obstacles that came up. But that, of course, didn't get us down or distract us from our ultimate goal. Anytime we came near a town, we were quite the spectacle. A group of riders on dirt bikes coming in. We would always get the question when we would go into a gas station or anywhere else, where are you guys riding? We would tell them that we came from a state or two away. People are always surprised and they're always interested in hearing how we made it that far and what our plan was to make it the rest of the way before dark. As the sun was setting, we couldn't help but be pretty nervous that we were still miles and miles away from our destination. We started getting quite cold and because of the elevation, and we started thinking this place might not even be open by the time we get there. This is going to be disappointing if we have ridden this far, only to show up and find out that it's closed. The last hour and a half to 2 hours were spent riding on pavement because of the lack of headlights, and some of our trail was cut out, partly because of the deadline and partly because the trails showed on the map that they were open. However, they were not OHV permitted. After covering roughly 500 miles on our dirt bikes, we made it to the destination. And the destination was a tiny pub just outside of Swan Valley, Idaho, where we ate blackened salmon. To this day, the good guy will nonstop tease the average guy because apparently the good guy's salmon was not blackened, whereas the average guy's salmon was blackened and was very spicy. So let the record show that average guy had the spiciest food that night. And the good guy had just regular salmon.